So I'm going to talk about supply and demand and price controls. So the first type of price control is a price ceiling. So this would be equilibrium right here, equilibrium price and quantity. So a price ceiling is a maximum that goes below equilibrium. So it's a maximum price that producers are allowed to charge on a certain good. This is commonly used during natural disasters or right immediately following natural disasters. That's to prevent producers from marking up the prices of essential goods like water in order to prevent surpluses so that consumers can't get them. So now with this artificially lowered price, you have a shortage because now the quantity supplied is less than the quantity demanded. So the quantity supplied does not meet the quantity demanded, and you have a shortage. You also have a different area of consumer and producer surplus. So right here, this is the quantity that a consumer is willing to pay. This is what they actually do end up paying with the new price ceiling. Willing to pay, did pay, willing to pay, did pay. And so now consumers are getting all of this extra benefit from this new price ceiling, this new maximum price. And producers are now willing to sell here, and now they have to sell at a lower price. So here, this area here would be your producer surplus. But the producers here can no longer charge that much because there is a maximum price. And so the producers that are willing and able to sell at that price cannot charge above the price ceiling. And so therefore no exchanges take place in this area, and that makes this deadweight loss. The other type of price control is a price floor. This is a minimum price that is set above equilibrium. The most common example of this is the concept of minimum wage, which is a minimum price or a minimum amount that the government says that a company can pay its employees. And so what a price floor does is it results in a surplus, because here you have your supply curve and your demand curve. So this right here would be the quantity supplied, which is people willing to work in the case of minimum wage, and here would be the quantity demanded, which is places willing to hire these people. But with a higher price, the demand for the quantity demanded for these workers is now lower, and so it results in a surplus of workers, and so you again have a different consumer and producer surplus in this case. So with the price floor, your consumer surplus would decrease because now this is what the consumers are willing to pay for the good or for the workers, but this is what they actually have to pay. And so this area would be consumer surplus. On the other hand, producer surplus, this is where the producers are willing and able to pay along this curve, and then this is the price that they actually pay. And so this whole area here is producer surplus. But again, because this is a minimum price, the consumers that are not willing to buy this good below this price do not make any exchanges, and so this entire area is deadweight loss. Another example of government intervention in supply and demand is taxes. So here we have a supply curve and demand curve. So let's say the government imposes a tax of $2 on a good. You would take a tax wedge of $2 and then you would slide it over until it hits both curves. So this would be your tax wedge. And so now this entire area is what the government is making. This is government revenue from the tax. This area up here is so here is what this consumer is willing and able to pay. And now instead of paying the equilibrium price, they have to pay a tax. So now they are paying this price. So consumer surplus is now decreased because part of what the consumer pays goes toward tax, and so they have to pay a higher price. Similarly with the producer surplus, now producers, instead of getting to keep the amount of money of the equilibrium price, now they can only keep this much because part of that money will have to go to the government for the tax. And so now you have this area as producer surplus. This little triangle right here is deadweight loss because no exchanges take place in this area.